Good evening, all. Permit me today the first among many others to welcome you to King's College, London. My name is Abiodun Alao. I'm a professor of African Studies here at King's College and the program director of the African Leadership Center. Special welcome to our guest, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, the former president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And let me say that this event is being organized by the African Leadership Center here at King's, and that requires me to say one or two things about the African Leadership Center. The center based here in London and in Kenya, dedicated to producing a global community of scholars researching exclusively into peace, leadership, and security issues in the continent. The ALC has both an academic wing here at King's College and a semi-autonomous research and training center in Nairobi, but more often than not, the two offices work together. What we are doing this evening is the inaugural lecture of a new lecture and dialogue series that we at the ALC are establishing, which is titled The African Leaders in Global Engagement. And the objective is to invite serving and former African leaders to come to King's to deliver a lecture on issues of primary importance to the continent. And we're particularly glad that President Olusegun Obasanjo has accepted our invitation to be our invitation to present the first in this series of lectures. So Your Excellency, it's a great pleasure to have you at King's. We're also honored to have in our midst the principal and the president of King's College London, Professor Head Barnes, and also the executive dean of the Faculty of Social Science and Public Policy, Professor Franz Beckert. It's also a great pleasure to have in our midst the former governor of Osun State of Nigeria, that happens to be my state, Governor Olusegun. You're welcome. So the event today is chaired by the Vice President and Vice Principal International of King's College, Professor Fumi Olonishaki, and it's a pleasure to welcome Fumi to come on. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Charles. Can we ensure that the sound engineers are still around, because this thing I noticed was cutting in and out. They're coming. Thank you. Let me say what a pleasure it is to finally launch this program that has been long awaited, especially amongst our students. I believe this actually is a crowning part of our leadership training program, which started about a decade ago, just over a decade, and we were deliberate in trying to build this global community of scholars. Even though it was motivated by the desire to build and train and develop a next generation of African leaders. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Does this project?
Yeah.
Very good. I think I'm going to dump this until it works well. The vision that underpinned the African Leadership Center was one in which we wanted this new generation of people, average age of 19 years old in Africa, to begin to become self-confident and to be competent at the same time, and look to generations before them, not to borrow every single idea from that generation, but to look at what is good and effective in that generation and build a particular kind of future for the 21st century. So having this program does three things, and that is why what is being launched today is very significant for us. First, it begins to put the voices of young Africans at the center of the debate, global debate and African debate around security and development futures of the world and the continent of Africa. And you can only do that intellectually and practically, combine the two. And that's what we're trying to do here at King's, especially through programs like this. But the second thing you want to do is place those voices. Make sure that those voices are resounding in the centers of power in Africa and globally. Number 3, without any contradiction in all of this, make sure there's an intergenerational dialogue between those that have held positions of power, but those that have been leading voices as well, and the future voices that we're grooming here at King's and in other parts of the continent and in practical places like the United Nations. And it's difficult to have that dialogue if there is no mutuality, if there's no mutually held view that the present and the past need to connect to build the kind of future that we want. And we have found that it's only a particular kind of that past voice, which is still in the present, that wants to have the dialogue. So it's not an accident that this particular program is being launched in this way. We planned towards it. And as you know, Professor Abiodun Alao was saying, you could see, you understand that the African Leadership Center has a purpose and a history to it, and there's a reason why it's located in 2 places, at King's and in Nairobi. We planned towards it, and the first program that was supported in this way, also especially by the Carnegie Corporation of New York, with matching funds from King's College London, is our fellowship program. You will find in this room today our African fellows, master students, postgraduate non-degree students, PhD students. But we put our money where our mouth is. You'll also find leadership studies students who are not from Africa but study Africa and study the world. So matching that next generation up from Africa and globally has produced a fantastic set of, if you like, products. But the second bit of it is that in this room, some of the leading practitioners that also volunteered to be part of this dialogue 3 years ago are in the room. So it's a pleasure to welcome some of you. There's General Agua in the room. Some of you have already been, you've been in General Agua's lecture. General Agua, you're welcome. You know that he was the UN Force Commander in Darfur. He also served under former President Olusegun Obasanjo as his Chief of Defense Staff. He was Deputy Military Advisor at the United Nations. We have here a leading, if you understand as leadership students, and today we talked about leadership in the formal realm and leadership in the informal realm. We discussed that in the gender and leadership class. That's a fine example of how you see the transition between the formal and informal. So when you see Ms. Adele Efayemi here, who founded or a co-founder of the African Women's Development Fund, which the idea was to bring this special voice to the table as well, who also co-founded other programs, the African Women's Leadership Institute at Akinamama. We're trying to link all of that, and has transitioned between the formal and informal in different times. She herself at this moment has come back again to be First Lady of Ekiti State. I'm not saying you wanted to come back, but you're compelled to be back since you're your spouse's wife as First Lady of that state. These are the sorts of things that we created on this program. You will see other leading practitioners who are interacting with you this week. So this launch today is especially for you to see how all of the programs and the theoretical knowledge that has been brought to bear in class connects with your practical life. And without further ado, let me say what a pleasure it is to chair today's program. I will be, on your behalf, I will interrogate Mr. President thoroughly for you. But before we do that, let me first call my own president in the university, Professor Ed Byrne, to come and welcome our special guest properly. It's my pleasure.
I'll also try to speak without the microphone. If you can't hear me, just put your hand up. But look, what a privilege it is to be with you tonight. I want to start just by acknowledging the centrality of the African Leadership Centre to King's College London as a world-leading university. It is exactly the type of thing we need to do to make a difference around the globe. We honoured Professor Vartan Gregorian, the head of the Carnegie Corporation of New York, with an honorary degree just about a week ago. And he spent much of his talk talking about the significance of leadership in Africa and the importance of the Leadership Centre. It was really heartwarming to hear, as President of King's, that work of such importance is going on. But my task tonight is to introduce Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. In my life, and you can see from my baldness and white hair that I'm quite old, I've only had the opportunity to hear and meet in person a very small number of people who've actually made history, who've been at the heart of history. And our speaker tonight is undoubtedly one of those, one of the greatest leaders to come out of Africa in decades, a man who has influenced history and made a difference in so many different ways. So I'm sure all of you tonight will treasure having had the opportunity to see him in person and to hear him speak, and it might be something you tell your children about. I have pages, I could say, about Chief Obasanjo. So I'm going to be fairly brief in my remarks because, Your Excellency, we want to hear you speak. But I'm not going to say a great deal about his early life. But I will say a little about some of his massive achievements. From 1976 to 1979, he was the head of state of Nigeria, Commander-in-Chief. As head of state, he immediately signalled his willingness to return Nigeria to a democratic nation by adopting the Second Republic Constitution and modelled it after the United States of America Constitution, with provisions for President, Senate, and House of Representatives. This great Nigerian statesman paved the way for a return to a democratically elected government, and in 1979, ladies and gentlemen, he became the first military leader to voluntarily transfer power to a civilian government in Nigeria. This epochal event marked a watershed in the evolution of modern Nigeria, ushering in, although only for a brief time initially, the Second Republic. Now, I'm not going to say anything about the many wonderful things he did subsequently, but I just want to mention that in the area of education, Chief Obasanjo's vision was incredibly strong. He saw very early the advent of globalization, a world that will become knowledge-based, and therefore he saw the necessity for a strategic investment in human capital development. He started with childhood education by introducing the universal primary education scheme nationwide. Through the deliberate policies of his administration, he increased the number of universities from 5 to 13, a massive achievement. He then left office in 1979 and became for a time a full-time farmer. He did all sorts of other things that I won't go into. One of the things he did was work on the Eminent Persons Group that people of my age will remember, that had such a pivotal role in ending the apartheid regime in South Africa. I had the privilege of hearing His Excellency speak about that at his first meeting with Nelson Mandela just a few moments ago. 20 years later, the Nigerian nation sought the service of this great man again, and in 1999 he was elected President of the Republic under the People's Democratic Party. A fight against corruption was a major priority for him, leading to the establishment of the Economic and Financial Crime Commission and the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, and a strengthening of the Code of Conduct Bureau. He had a massive impact, and he also attracted some of the best technical leaders in the world to work in the Nigerian government. Just want to mention a few facts. When Chief Obasanjo left office in 2007, the economy had grown from 3% to 6% GDP, by that much a year. The Nigerian foreign reserve was only $2 billion US when he came into office. He left it with 43 billion. That level of achievement was mirrored across almost every aspect of Nigeria that you could look at. Now, his impact, although massive in Nigeria, has not been confined there. On Africa, from 76 to 79, he had a huge leadership role across Africa, promoting African unity and helping other African nations secure independence. This would be a lecture in itself. Recognising his fantastic contributions internationally, Chief Obasanjo has received over 50 national and international honours. Just to mention one or two: Grand Commander of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, United Nations Special Recognition for his role in African crises, including in the Democratic Republic of the Congo as Special Envoy, but also in many other situations. He is indeed one of the great leaders of our time. It is a massive privilege to have him at King's. Your Excellency, can I invite you to deliver your lecture?
Professor Eddie Brand, I thank you very much for that very long introduction. I tell you, those in Nigeria who believe that my period in government, they don't like it. They just call me general, wanting to show that although I was an elected president, that I was still a military man. Those who, of course, like me, or who are in my party, they just call me chief, again, to show that even though I was a general, I dropped that, I'm now a chief. But thank you very much for going and mentioning some of the areas that is of importance in my life as a leader and in my activities both in my country, in Africa, and indeed in the world. Let me thank you, sir, and thank you, Fumi, for this honor of making me to give the inaugural edition of King's College Africa Global Leaders Engagement Series. I very much appreciate this. And I thank all of you for being here this evening. Over the short period we will be here, I think I will learn probably as much from you as you may try to learn from me, because we will have interaction. And Fumi has promised that he will not let me go scot-free, whatever that means. But when I received the invitation in April this year, as the first speaker in the King's College London Global Leaders Engagement Series, I applauded the brilliance and the thoughtfulness that went into starting this platform. And I quote, for African leaders to showcase diverse ways in which they are producing ideas for Africa's development and the security of Africa's future. End of quotation. I commend the authorities and you, sir, the President, and the principal of King's College, London, and you've Professor Fumi Olusegun as Vice Principal and Vice President International. Coincidentally, the Africa Progress APG, which I chair and which used to be Africa Progress Panel, chaired by late Kofi Annan for 10 years, will be having its inaugural meeting about 2 weeks from today. And that is on November 27 at the Olusegun Obasanjo Presidential Library, Abeokuta, Nigeria, with one of its objectives converging with the major aim of this series. APG is made up of eminent former and serving political, public, and private sector leaders from Africa and friends of Africa from across the world. The main thrust in the coming years for APG is to pursue an agenda with all African governments, the private sector, international development partners, and other stakeholders in ensuring that every African, now and for generations to come, lives in a world in which he or she has fair chance of leading a healthy, happy, prosperous, and fulfilling life. It is my earnest hope that both APG and King's College London will work together within our areas of common interest for the development of Africa, because we have interest and programs that can complement themselves. The topic of this lecture, demystifying leadership capacity deficit of African youth, our future is in their hands, has a positive ring to it. Viewed from the lens of simple logic, it suggests that it is false to believe that the youth cannot do well as leaders, that such an idea is a myth, and hence my goal within the logical framework is to crush the myth. In the next 40 minutes or so, I intend to present argument to support my view, and although I had over 400 case studies, then for each minute, I intend to spend to buttress my argument, but time will only permit a few examples which will be rendered in some chronological sequence. After the sample case studies, the address will progress to discussing key issues in leadership in Africa by the youth, some challenges in actualizing the youth agenda for leadership, and how these challenges or obstacles can be surmounted. Let us consider through history some case studies of successful leadership by youth. In the next few minutes, I will take you on a historical tour of more than 2,000 years to show how the youth offered unforgettable and impressive leadership, not just to their small communities, but to the world. As I stated earlier, the examples are replete, but a few will meet my gaze in this address. As a Christian theologian, let me begin with Jesus Christ. The chronology of Jesus typically has the date of start of his ministry estimated at around AD 27 to 29, and the end in the range of AD 30 to 36. He was only 30 when he started his ministry. And today, he has the highest number of followers, about 34% of the world's population. And no one who has ever lived has edifices built to immortalize his name, nor books written about him as it has been done for Jesus Christ. Next, I take Aristotle, who was influenced by Socrates and Plato as forerunner and teacher, and who from the age of 18 showed leadership in scientific research, philosophical reflections, and educational theory and philosophy, which still exert significant impact on contemporary thought and practice. Alexander the Great spent much of his childhood learning to be a leader. Just 20 years old, Alexander claimed the Macedonian, led his army to victories across the Persian territories of Asia Minor, Syria, and Egypt, without suffering a single defeat. Alexander was acknowledged as a military genius, who always led by example. Augustus Caesar, the first Roman emperor, also known as Octavian, reigned over the Roman Empire for 41 years. At his young age, he ended a period of lengthy civil wars in the Roman Republic and started a period known as Pax Romana, or Roman peace. Joan of Arc, nicknamed the Maid of Orleans, and peasant girl living in medieval France, believed that God had chosen her to lead France to victory in its long-running war with England. At age 18, she led the French army to victory over the English. With no military training, Joan convinced the embattled Crown Prince Charles to allow her to lead a French army to the besieged city of Orleans, where it achieved a momentous victory over the English and their French allies, the Burgundians. We should now move along our historical journey of young leaders to the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. Let us take Mozart, who was one of the most influential composers of all time. At the age of 10, he had played for many of the great kings of Europe. Everything he did during his early years was nothing short of superlative. At 14, he wrote his first opera, about a classical king who rebelled from Rome, which opened a major success for him. Napoleon Bonaparte, at the age of 30, became a French general, first consul, and at the age of 35 became the Emperor of France. Napoleon's many reforms left lasting mark on the institutions of France and of much of Western Europe. I will now fast track to pre-colonial African leaders. Shaka Zulu, the famed 19th century leader of South Africa Zulus, and at the age of 29, brought tribal factions together for the first time, creating both a state and a powerful sense of identity for the region's largest group. Shaka Zulu took power after distinguishing himself in battle, both physically and strategically, and began a campaign of conquest to unite all of the clans in the region under his rule. Tom Mboya was a Pan-Africanist and one of Kenya's founding fathers. At the age of 28, he was elected the chairman of the All African People's Conference convened by Kwame Nkrumah. Mboya played a crucial role in establishing the trade unions in Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, and also in creating the Students' Airlift, which helped many Kenyan students go to the United States for further studies. Let us move on. Considered a brilliant and fearless man, Patrice Lumumba is said to have had an uncanny gift of instantaneously exposing the plots of the enemies of the United Congo. After having established himself as a leader in organizing unions, Lumumba co-established the Congolese national movement at the age of 33. He called for countrywide unity, bringing together different ethnic backgrounds and groups, and freedom from colonial atrocities, with major links to Pan-Africanist movements as well. What about more pre-independence African young leaders? Time will not permit me my full chronicle of their outstanding achievements. But here we have, in my own country, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Obafemi Awolowo, and in Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, again in my own country, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, and then in East Africa, Julius Nyerere, in West Africa, Sekou Touré, among several others, who led their countries at comparatively very young age. Post-independence, and worthy of mention also, is General Yakubu Gowon, who was my boss, who assumed office at the age of 32 and ensured the unity of Nigeria by successfully embarking on a civil war to prevent the breakup of Nigeria. Without being immodest, my personal example is also worth mentioning. I ended the Nigerian Civil War in the field at the age of 33, and I became a military head of state at the same age as Murtala Mohammed at 39, and I completed my assignment at the age of 42, and I went to become a farmer. We also have some impressive modern-day examples. Paul Kagame, a Rwandan military leader and politician, who at the age of 37 assumed the titles of Vice President and Minister of Defense. At the age of 43, he became President of Rwanda. He has led his country to great economic heights since then. Early this year, Ethiopia produced one of the youngest African political leaders as its Prime Minister, in person of Dr. Abiy Ahmed Ali. He is making waves in moving his country forward and making peace within its region. Examples of young, successful leaders also abound in private sector. Ugandan-born Christopher Ategelika is the founder and CEO of Rides for Lives, which is a company that provides mobile health care to rural communities in Kampala. The mobile health units are fitted with a pharmacy, a general practitioner, and a lab for conducting tests for diseases such as malaria and HIV/AIDS. He also made it on the Forbes 30 under 30 list for his work with the company in 2014. Aliko Dangote, Tony Elumelu, and Strive Masiyiwa are other globally cited examples of successful young leaders in the private sector in Africa. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, On account of depressing records of development in the African continent, the word leadership in Africa often evokes negative emotions and proclamations. It is often associated with despotic, power-hungry leaders who had used their position for personal gains and are frequently unwilling to let go of power. Bokassa and Mobutu were good and typical examples. It is unfortunate that the optimism that attended the immediate post-independence period has not translated into concrete socio-economic development as envisaged by founding fathers. Africa's aspirations and hopes remain today largely unfulfilled. The equation that once produced leaders in Africa is changing, and the ethos of leaders is being transformed as a number of leadership categories are emerging. Let me mention 6 of these categories. First are the political leaders. They are the active players in governance. They formulate policies and direct the affairs of the nation. Second are business leaders who wield influence on their own and with the political leaders to ensure that they can take calculated risks for the improvement and sustenance of the economy and of their investments. Third are the activists who have become the rallying point for the underprivileged, the oppressed, and the marginalized. The fourth are religious leaders who command large, obedient, and faithful following. The fifth are celebrities and athletes who have cult-like following, particularly on social media, and can easily sway the thoughts of the majority in the court of public opinion. The sixth are in the ivory tower of academia, research, technology, and innovation. Traditional leaders have substantially lost influence and relevance, if not prestige. Today, in Africa, young people are likely involved in the last 5 categories and have found breaking through the ranks of political leadership not easily permeable or attainable. Young Africans are thriving in businesses, holding government accountable as civil society activists, leading religious movements as influencers, and excelling in entertainment and sports on a global scale. However, they have not been able to sit at the table where the policies that affect them are made. In retrospect, they are not entirely at fault. Attempts by the youth to lead or participate in decision-making have been greeted by barriers that come in varied forms and styles. Young people are often excluded or overlooked when it comes to issues of leadership, because it is typically regarded as a space for experienced men and not even so much for women. Many young people are systematically marginalized because of their young age, limited opportunities, and projected lack of experience. This has made many youth less likely to participate in the political process, and yet they form the largest group of voters. We have seen leaders use violence to thwart youth participation, as young people are seen as radical and dangerous elements that that should be kept away from key decision-making processes. Also, most, if not all, political parties across Africa are guilty of virtually closing political spaces to youth, especially by creating all sorts of barriers to keep them out, such as the high cost of participation in elective positions. In the Nigerian elections coming up in February, March next year, young people have condemned the hike in the price of nomination tours by two major political parties and high cost of running elections in the country. Only a few young people occupy positions within political party structures that are relevant in decision making, and even when they are given positions, their views are never taken seriously and are overridden by adults. This diminishes the desire of young people to take part in any discussions or events as they feel that they are just adding to the numbers. As a way to promote youth participation, we must recognize that young people have a lot to teach us as they understand better the dynamics of our interconnected world. Their increased educational attainment and advances in technology make them better positioned for leadership. On the economic front, underemployment, unemployment, and poverty have barred many young Africans from committing their energy to political activism and leadership. In addition, gender-based discrimination have discouraged many young African women from taking part in political leadership exercises. Even with the global call for gender equality, young women are coming into leadership at slower rates than men. Very often, women are still largely absent from national and local political decision-making bodies. They struggle to have a voice in peace-building transitions and are excluded from political processes. From discrimination and violence to a lack of support and resources, women face countless challenges in participation in the socio-economic and political life of their countries. Evidence has shown that when women are involved, they improve the political process, champion issues of gender equality, design outstanding policies that impact their communities for generations, and become mentors and role models for young women. Women such as His Excellency Amina Gurib of Mauritius and Chimamanda Adichie of Nigeria have inspired many young women. We have seen that countries with increased women participation tend to be more inclusive, responsive, egalitarian, and democratic. Let me also add here that youth must accept part of the blame. Again, talking about coming Nigerian elections, an arrangement among the young aspirants to choose a consensus candidate from within their ranks had failed to see the light of the day, as it was marred in controversy. It was named Presidential Aspirant Coming Together, PACT, P-A-C-T. 15 aspirants formed the pact, but they failed to agree on the pact. I don't need to mention their names, but their names are Thomas Wilson, Obey George, Mugalu, all down to Clement Jimbo and Very few young people in many African countries rally together to champion the prioritization of youth empowerment. Young people must start to fight for their future and begin to arm themselves with adequate information. They must be strategic and tactical in short, medium, and long term. Lack of active mentoring between the older and younger generations is a huge challenge of leadership in Africa. African leaders in business, government, religion, development, diplomacy, academia, and many areas of endeavor do not have deliberate, institutionalized, and active mentoring structure in place for the youth. What is more common and less effective is role modeling. While it is not a bad idea in itself, the raw experience and networking that comes with mentoring are invaluable. Another point worthy of mention is poor succession planning or lack of succession plans. While corporations in other climes train their youth for seamless succession, the monopoly of leadership still hurts Africa's businesses and institutions. This often leads to the demise of corporations and organizations once the founder or the more effective leader dies or disappears from the scene. Making one person the life of an organization negates the rudiments of leadership. In government, it is a big difference. Incumbents are fond of anointing successors to watch their back, which may often contradict the wishes and the interests of the people. Sometimes politicians appoint cronies to succeed them in a bid to cover their tracks of misdeeds and corruption. Another challenge is too many bad examples of leaders. Many leaders in government, business, and religion are corrupt. They wear acceptable behaviors in the open, but are wolves in sheep's clothing. This is discouraging for young ones, and particularly for those aspiring to leadership positions. Not too long ago, I had some schools visiting my presidential library, and on that occasion I received the children from those schools. After they have gone around and I had interaction with them, I asked how many of them wanted to be governors. We have 36 governors in our country because we have 36 states. None of them put up his hand or her hand. Then I asked, why don't you want to be governor? They say all governors are corrupt and they don't want to be corrupt. That speaks a volume. But all hope is not lost. In spite of the challenging configuration of the present leadership landscape in Africa, like the true sons and daughters that we have, our youth are trailblazers in many endeavors and across different areas at home and abroad. They followed greatly hazardous routes to seek fulfillment over the Sahara Desert and the Mediterranean Sea. In these and other areas, most of them have weathered storms, surmounted identity crises, and socio-economic marginalization and oppression. What must we do? We must raise awareness and take up the work of advocacy. We must create platforms for active mentoring. In the build-up to 2015 election in Nigeria, a young Nigerian wrote to me that she and her friends were in a state of confusion and hopelessness They indicated that they were confused about the present and disheartened or disillusioned about the future. And I eventually granted them audience to allay their fears and encouraged about 20 of them at a weekend retreat, taking 2 other accomplished leaders with me to keep hope alive for them. But there are many more on our streets, in our workplaces, spread across the continent, who will not write or are willing and unable to do so. It is high time we started allowing our youth, our children, to sit at important tables with us, to ask questions, to share their opinions. Let them make mistakes and be corrected. If we all look back, we must have made mistakes one time or the other as we grew up and mature. The youth are saying nothing about us without us. Respect is an important part of African culture, but we should reinvent it. Respect is a two-way traffic. It should not be subject to age, authority, or experience alone. Respect should be mutual. Let us respect our children, our youth, to help build their self-confidence and their life. They live at a time when they have to compete globally with their peers, and they live in a more exposed and transparent world. The world of electronics, digital, and AI. Let us respect their views. Let us refrain from making all the decisions. When you give them a task, leave them to do it their way, and where necessary, listen to their explanation. Do not echo their errors in public to embarrass them and cow them. But correct them with meekness, love, and respect. Remember, they do not have your experience. Hence, they are bound to have different perspectives and choices on the same matter. Like a baby learning to walk, let us watch them try and fall and help them to get up. And at the same time, let us guide them and hold their hands until their legs are strong enough to carry them to run and jump. Let those in government keep remembering that education of youth is priceless. Let us invest in good schools and the welfare of teachers and provide conducive learning facilities and environment. Education should involve full development of innate capacity, acquisition of knowledge and skills, and empowerment for meaningful and substantial contribution to an inclusive community and shared society. Education transforms, integrates, and reforms. It can be overwhelming and overpowering. We have seen throughout history what people have achieved and could achieve at young age. Today, youth are more exposed and more prepared because the whole world is their school and they have mobile classrooms. Governance, using other people's children, governance should be more of service and less of political. Enough of using other people's children as experimental subjects and keeping us in safe havens. Enough of using other people's children as political thugs and ballot box toffers while we send ours to Ivy League schools. Enough of thinking we know what is right for young people without their input or the courtesy of asking for their opinions. Succession planning is a culture that Africa needs to imbibe. It increases the number of people who are capable or unavailable to assume leadership roles when the incumbent is no longer available to do so. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a deliberate process. We cannot continue to assume that by mere observation from afar, young people understand why we do what we do. We must introduce them to our networks and partners, set them up to represent us in important meetings while we can still guide and nurture them. An organization should not kaput because one person is no longer available to lead. Africa must learn to train the youth to succeed their leaders in all fields of human endeavor. If constitutional changes are required, let us begin now. If policies and political party structures have to change, let us begin now. If what use is a law that allows young people contest for a particular office only to be confronted with the hurdle of outrageously exorbitant cost of party nomination forms and campaign costs. Young people must continue to engage political leaders till they lower the cost of election and governance in Africa. Young people are not too young to run for political offices, but insurmountable barriers are put against them. Adults running for elective offices, to be octogenarians or over in such offices, are also barriers to the young in getting to political leadership. Special attention and consideration must be given to the girl child. We have to ensure that they have equal opportunities as boys and see them collectively as our tomorrow, not as part of it. Understand that a girl can learn to be homely and still be a great scientist. A child is first human before his or her gender. Like the male child, girls have dreams and the wherewithal to achieve them. And we also like to talk about entrepreneurship. It is the buzzword on the street. And I am glad that our youth have been beaten by the ball. They are building their businesses and not all waiting to be employees. This paradigm is much needed at a time like this. I, however, urge them to do more than create businesses that will cater only for their personal survival. At the onset, they must broaden their mind and vision for their businesses to grow from micro to small and from medium scale ventures to corporations. They must deploy technology to make friends and meet business associates across the globe, to build international brands. They must think globally and begin by acting local. Government needs to also come to their aid. Another reason, they must be actively involved in governance. Government must make policies that encourage their businesses and expand their horizon. In looking ahead, what do I see? It is evident that the future belongs to the youth, but young people must remember that the future is influenced by the present and the past. Fumi made that point in our introduction. The present is a legacy of the past, handed over by other generations. This legacy is a product of hard work, successes, failures, and experiences, it must be preserved. The youth must understand that today's leaders are tomorrow's seniors, and the record of their leadership will also become a legacy to another generation. This is one of the major reasons I set up the Olusegun Presidential Library, especially its Youth Development Center and the Center for Human Security and Dialogue, to serve as nursery for training Africa's future leaders through formal and informal debates, dialogues, interactions, discussions, research, and visits. By the year 2050, it is estimated that African population will be well over 2 billion, and 80% will be living in cities. You can imagine the problem of transportation, housing, accommodation, schools, and sanitation and water. It is going to be a great challenge and great opportunity. Whether our population is turned into great asset or great liability and danger, our efforts at protection and security will be determined by our politics and governance, our partnership within and outside Africa, and our handling of education, infrastructure, agribusiness, technology, and the economy generally. As we endeavor towards realizing Agenda 2030, which recognizes that the challenges to peace and security are rooted in developmental deficits, we must identify and tackle the obstacles that hinder the youth from playing active role in leadership, development, and peace building. One of these obstacles is the lack of economic opportunity, which is rendering too many youth hopeless and denying them access to decent livelihood. We must begin to adopt aggressive policies on youth education, skill acquisition, empowerment, and employment. Companies must be encouraged to offer young people internship, placement, and volunteering positions. Our leaders must include young people in policy design, implementation, and monitoring, especially for issues that affect their lives. It is crucial that we support programs aimed at building the leadership and entrepreneurial capacities of young people, promoting gender equality, and assisting those with disabilities. We must partner with young people to use their strength in prevention of violence and in recruitment into violent and extremist groups, and of course, make them embrace promotion of peace through peer-to-peer education and sharing. Young people must continue to take advantage of social media to organize themselves. It is pivotal that we recognize, support, and promote the role of youth in the implementation of Agenda 2063 for Africa and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, by way of concluding remarks, I see hope in that the future of Africa is in the hands of its youth. I see hope of a continent where the creative energies, intellectual prowess, and ingenuity of our youth are capable to lead us to our promised land. I see hope in the courage of our youth to hold government accountable and their resistance to tyranny and despotism. I see hope of a thriving continent made better by the youth than they met it. I see hope in the honest labors of young people on the streets who shun illegal money-making means and who sweat daily to earn a living. I see hope in our youth who, despite all they have seen and experienced, still believe in the dignity of hard work with tremendous energy, ingenuity, and commitment. And it is this hope that we must keep alive. Fear has no place in hope. We must be hopeful in our actions and perceptions of our youth. And while we still can, we must give them all the support, knowing that when we are no longer here, they will carry on the torch, guiding it with their oar. More than ever before, I believe in African youth and their capacity as I have seen them and understood them. And as for hope, they are the reasons why an octogenarian like me is filled with hope of a united, progressive, integrated, and prosperous Africa, taking its rightful place in a global decision-making process and in the international division of labor and production. Once again, I thank you for inviting me to this important event, and Mr. President, I thank you.
Mr. President, thank you so much. I think you've done us proud with the intellectual bit, and I wasn't expecting anything short of what you just did. Your paper tomorrow is going to be subjected to discussion in our leadership studies class, and all the leadership studies students are here. We, in fact, in term 2, have a paper, have a module on what module are you teaching now? Well, youth and society in the developing world. And I think you've given us a lot of food for thought. There's so many burning questions in my mind, but I promised you before that the first thing we'll do is I will first ask you leadership theory questions so that class has something to chew on for tomorrow. I can't help but notice, though, that if we put your paper out there, it will look like the perfect policy note. Because the way you dissected those 6 current leadership areas, we can subject the exclusion of traditional leaders from that list to a bigger debate, to a debate sometime. But the fact that young people are thriving, are active in 5 of those areas, but not in the realm of politics. And you did the analysis. You put the blame on both sides, on those who are governing the political space at the moment, and on young people themselves. And some people would say, in any case, have we not bred a generation that will behave exactly the same way as the previous generation? Let's put that aside. The policy statements, to my mind, that I thought I heard at the end of, from the midpoint to the end, very clear, with clarity. When I compare that to what we found on our progress panel, or not our progress panel, your progress panel now is confusing me, Mr. President. You've had several progress panels. It's our youth, our peace and security, progress study on youth peace and security. United Nations Secretary General had appointed a number of us to the advisory group, but there was a lead author for that progress study. Graham Simpson went across. Graham Thompson went across different regions with his team. The one thing that is consistent across all regions, not just in the regions of Africa, across the board, is this perception from young people that their leaders hate them. Hate. And you know, it's palpable. I myself have, at the invitation sometimes of some of our colleagues in government, observed some of the attitudes of the governing elite. It's almost as though this is not about the youth. You know, the sin of self in the middle of it. There's a lot to interrogate. And therefore, when I see that policy note that has clarity and is thoughtful and actually says the kinds of things that I'm sure young people want to hear about what should happen, I say to myself, but is this what the ruling elite across the board think? It doesn't, there's just something about the practice that doesn't sync with the kinds of, which is why we're having this conversation, with the kinds of ideas that you have just produced in that paper, in that talk. But because I don't want to monopolize this space, and because I promise to ask leadership theory questions, I want to have a dialogue first, and there are 3 questions at the heart of that I'd like to put to you, Mr. President. The first is, knowing that at the age of 33, or at least between the ages of 39 and 42 yourself, you led the country. Let's remove your presidential experiences from it. What particular situation stands out in your mind the most that you would say accounted, is responsible for your emergence into leadership, even before you became head of state in the first instance? That's my first question.
I think
it will.
Well, I think maybe my own situation is probably unique because I started my life as a soldier. And of course, I joined the army because I wanted to protect and give security to my country. But I did not, for any moment before and after I've joined the army, that I will have to fight a civil war in my country. You see, the training I had as a soldier is fighting an external enemy, where, of course, I know where the enemy is, I locate the enemy, and I bring the weight of all the forces and weapons that I have to destroy the enemy. Now, I had a situation where I had to fight a war to unite, not a war to destroy. A war to keep alive, not a war to kill. A war to bring in, not a war to keep out. Now that was very, very important in my life. I found myself, as I said, at a very young age, having to deal with soldiers that I would send out. But my preoccupation is their safety and their protection. And I'm sending them out to people who I don't want them to kill. But at the same time, they are carrying weapons they want to kill. I think that made very, very powerful and significant impression on me and in my leadership development, to the extent that um, you, I know what, for instance, my first attempt as a divisional commander when I was in the war front, my first attempt to go out and fight was a failure. And it was a failure because I stick to the book. All the things that I learned in the military and all that. And what happened was that before I was ready, our brothers on the other side have got my plan. And they were ready. And they gave us a bloody nose. Well, I learned a lesson that, yes, there is what is in the book, but this is a different situation, and I have to play it as I have to play it to be able to achieve the purpose that I have to achieve. I think that was very important in terms of, well, of course, the training I had as a military officer in this country and outside this country is to manage. Now, is to manage. Don't worry about me. It is to manage materials, resources, and men in peace and in conflict. And well.
Okay. Okay. Then, Mr. President, let's talk about effectiveness in leadership. And you have enough in leadership theories to have analyzed a whole range of things. But we find that effectiveness, in a sense, is situational and it has other dimensions, gender being amongst it. But situational in the sense that with exactly the same kind of resources, with exactly the same kind of features, you will be less effective in a particular situation than you are in another. What situation stands out in your mind as one that brought out your effectiveness in leadership?
There are many, but the one that I will probably point out for the purpose of this meeting is when Murtala Mohammed and I, we were the target of a coup. Murtala was killed. I managed to escape not because of my military prowess, but the grace of God. And it was, the first thing was the confusion that you had to deal with. The second thing was and it was real confusion. The second thing was the political thing that you have to deal with. There's also the religious that you have to deal with. There's the sectional that you have to deal with. It is a mixture of all these. And if you go wrong in one of them, it could lead to a real disaster for the country. And now, maybe let me give the story of what really happened. It was on a Friday. We were supposed to be going to office, and Murtala, who had his material to go to mosque, was going to the office, and he was shot and killed. Now, the people who are behind this were Christians. And in Nigeria, that is an incendiary for anything. Then we had then a leader, a Muslim leader in the north, who started saying, hey, this is Christian trying to eliminate Muslims. Then I was targeted, but I was saved. Then, okay, that also became an issue. Why was Muritala killed and Obasanjo was not killed? Muritala was a Muslim. He was killed by Christian coup makers. Obasanjo, a Christian, was not killed by Christian coup makers. Now you know this thing. So the first thing was that, because I felt really disappointed. We thought we were doing what we believe we needed to do for the country. So when my colleagues, when we have looked at things in the evening of the coup, and we said, okay, we will inform the families of particularly Muritala before we took other steps. So I had to take a grip of things. One, we announced what happened. Two, we promised that we will seek those who are culprit as much as we can, and we will bring them to justice. And as God will have it, we actually were able to arrest the man who did the killing of Mutala. He tried to escape. Again, as God will have it, he did not succeed. Now, and then the next thing I did was, look, what did we do wrong? Now, and I remember the man who was in charge of security, MD Yusuf, came to me and said, look, since I'm in charge of security and these things have come this way, I believe I have to put in my resignation. I said, no, I will not accept your resignation. We are all at fault. We are too lax about security and all that. But let us all look at what happened. And we did. We put in remedial measures and all that. And while we were doing that, things slowed down. And I remember one of our colleagues, of course, as things slowed down, people started, this is no longer an active government, they should back up and go. I remember one of our colleagues, he came to me one day and said, look, they're abusing us everywhere. What do we do? I said, I don't know what you do, but for me, let them abuse us. I know what I do. We have to do an introspection and see what have we done wrong and put our house in order before we start going at And we did that. And about 3 months, they started praising us again. And Joe came back and said, hey, they are praising us again. I said, yes. Now, you know this thing in my part of the world, that they say, human being's tongue goes forward, goes back. They have gone back before, they are now going forward. Let us now keep doing what we are doing. I think that really was, and we smarten up and we move on.
Thank you, Mr. President. One last question, sorry, to that leadership theory thing. The one situation where you felt you are at your most ineffective as a leader, what was the most challenging for you? Where you feel that you did not exercise effective leadership, or at least in terms of outcomes, what emerged was leadership ineffectiveness?
Leadership ineffectiveness. I don't know. This would be better. It would be better said by those who are impartial observers. But how will I say leadership ineffectiveness? Political or military?
Anyone that starts with.
I don't think it's leadership ineffectiveness. I think leadership inability to get adequate resources to do what you will have wanted to do. And if I had got all the resources that I wanted, I would have done a lot more in power
as a military or civilian leader.
No, I did better in that as a military. As a military, I built Chiroro, I built Keba. I started what do you call the one in Lagos, Egni, which President Shakari completed. It is power. See, when I took over and President Rice said it, we had a reserve of around 3 billion. And we owed so much that we were servicing our debt with more than 3 billion a year, and the quantum of debt was not even going down. The price of oil when I came in was between $8 and $9. The oil companies that were flaring gas, they wouldn't listen. So, if I had money, I would have done what I came to do about 3 or 4 years later, which they called independent power production. I would have done it within the first year or 2 of my coming into government. So, and that, what happened was that I left government in 1979. I came back in 1999. How many years? 20 years. There was not a single megawatt of electricity added to what we had. Yeah, not one single. So 20 years for a country that we were trying to develop. If anything, what in fact was left was run down. And if I had got money, I would have. And the oil companies were not willing to have. When there was a bit of money, we went for this, and up to today, the 7 power stations have not been completed. Up to today.
Thank you, Mr. President. What I'm going to do is to take a list of questions, sir, because I'm sure the students are now waiting.
They are free to ask questions.
Okay, so we're going to moderate it and we'll try and do it efficiently. Can the lecturers first put their hands down, please? The students. But when we take the next 3, we'll take the first 3 together, Mr. President. I just want to come back to that earlier thing, because how many of the governing elite at the moment do you think buy that paper you just gave us? Who agree with everything that you're saying? But
I think I can answer that. No, the point really is what I'm saying, right or not right. That's the first thing. Okay. If we agree that it's right, and you remember what I said, we have to raise awareness and we have to embark on advocacy. Now, that also means that not everybody will agree. You see, I found something when I was in government. There are 2 mistakes that leaders make, particularly in Africa. There's what I call mistakes of commission and mistakes of omission. Mistake of omission are they just don't know any better. And if they don't know any better, you have to make them know better. Let me give you an example of mistake of commission, of omission. Julius Nyerere started something they call Ujama.
yes.
And the international world was praising it. Oh. So one day I visited President Nyerere, and President Nyerere said to me, "Don't mind them. Ujama is a failure." Yeah. And he said to me, what he did not know, what he did not realize was the attachment of an African to his ancestral land. And he was interested, look, let's put this different little settlements together so that I can give them water, I can give them electricity. But this strong attachment to land, ancestral land, he did not take it into consideration. And he said he will bring people together. After 3 months, they've scattered. So it failed. And yeah, so you have to understand, yes, what really will work. So if there are people who don't understand, it is our responsibility to make them understand. And that responsibility is for those that understand and accept, and those that believe, those that are even victims. I would say, for instance, when we talk about women in Africa, I said, look, why should women continue to suffer what they are suffering? They are the mothers, they are the wives, they are the sisters, they are the cousins, they are the girlfriends. Yes. Now, why should they be suffering? How do we then get the men to get to know that if you make women partners and there's equality of gender, you will develop better? It just stands to reason. If 50% of your population, in fact in Nigeria we are 50, women are 52%. If 52% of your population are empowered as much as the 48%, you can imagine what you will get. So why can't we explain that and make sure that it sticks and it works? So I will say that those that understand should be more responsible to make those that do not understand.
Okay.
We were saying something today with Jima and Wilola. Some of the things that we put in place that were reversed. And if they haven't been reversed, what progress we will have made. But we shouldn't be disappointed. We shouldn't be frustrated. We should just continue to fight on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll shut up. Let me see the show of hands on this side.
Okay, you have 2 or 3.
Yes, so I'm going to take 2 immediately from this side and then go to this side for 2. Mr. President, I'm going to collect them so that you respond to the ones that grab you the most. Let me go to the master's room.
Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for your talk. My question is that during your time in leadership, what steps did you take to engage actively with the youth in terms of active mentoring and active modeling or role modeling? And what lessons can others take from the steps that you've taken?
Thank you very much. Give it to a woman at the back. I don't want to be guilty of her. Take it. No, don't waste my time. Take it, my friend.
Hello. On women, what do you think are the steps that need to take place in order to make it seductive for men to release the power that will allow women to engage?
To make men release the power.
Yeah.
Mr. President, I'm covering this side. Good Actually,
evening.
it's not bad for you guys to be introducing yourselves to Mr. President when you talk.
Good evening, Your Excellency. My name is Wade Zerukatwa and I'm a fellow at the African Leadership Center. And my question is about power, which you kind of just touched on. And more specifically, the fact that I guess as a military leader and as a civilian leader, your base of power can, be said to have been quite fixed or easily describable. But now that you are out of office, how would you describe the base of your power, assuming that you believe you have some kind of power, and what is your active approach to using that power to create influence?
Very interesting. What is your current base of power now that you're out of office?
Okay, that's what you're saying.
Yes.
I didn't get it there.
No, she's giving you theory for you, don't worry. Oh, sorry. One last one at the back. So the last one from this side. I will cover this side too. Let me just do.
Well, let's have the last one here,
Yes.
and then I will deal with those 4.
Absolutely.
And then we can take 4 here and just stop it.
Good evening, sir. My name is Victor Weiss, and I'm a student of King's College. My question is very simple. What is the most important attribute of a leader? Thank you.
Let me take, I can take these 4
Yes, yes, sir. Yes.
What action did I take to deal with youth and them? We in government, we didn't have, the offices we have ministers, advisors. Then I introduced something that I call special assistant and senior special assistant. And what I did was to make them senior special assistant, get the same salary and enjoy the same thing as advisors. And special assistant has just a little bit low. And I did that for 3 reasons, 3 purposes. One, before I came in, there had been fractionalization of body politic, particularly in the days of politics. And I was looking for ways of bringing children, relations of those who have been antagonistic together. I brought Afikwe's family, Awolowo's family, Tadana's family, Afabalewa's family, Opara's family, Akintola's family, name them. So there were, the other aspect is I wanted people to be in the young and to be in the corridor of power and start seeing what it is and learn. And that's where the present Senate President, I brought him in. With some of them who are now even billionaires, like Toko Echunobi, brought him in. Anduba brought him in. Yeah. Nuhu Ribadu brought him in. Even now, governor of Kaduna brought him in. So, in fact, what used to be interesting in my cabinet, there are about 6 of them who are under 40, and they used to argue among themselves. Obi, Frank, Frank, what is it? Frank Wiki. But about 6 of them, they will be arguing. Nenadi, your own Nenadi.
Yes. Are you good?
Okay. So, this some of the things that they. Now, what happened? Unfortunately, but he has he's entitled to his own position and his own situation. My successor said he was not going to do that, and he didn't do it. I can't ask him to do it. And some of those that came in, some came from outside Nigeria, in diaspora, and went back. What make me really? What will make men release power to women? Look,
Oh
the
dear.
only thing that can make people do what they want to, what they will not want to do, is to make their not doing it more costly to them than they are doing it. Do you get the point? But that's all. How can, and you think about it, how can you make men to really suffer for not giving up power if than suffer more than giving up power? You think of it, and when you get the answer, then power will be given to you. What's the base of my power today? I haven't got political power. I haven't got coin. I haven't got that. I have moral. You see, in any position you are, there is certain amount of moral authority, moral power. The rest is what you now gain. I don't have anything. If you ask me, I can't put you in jail. I cannot bet my voice, and what I say carries weight.
Mr. President, would you say it carries weight more in Nigeria or in Africa continentally?
That's the truth. And that is very important. It is moral authority. And that should be preserved. That should be preserved. That's all that I have. If you say, look what, if Obasanjo, you see him on the road, you knock him down. You can knock me down. But if I know you are coming, I won't. But that is important. And in any society, you need people like that. You even have people who led small countries, but because of this moral authority, or you can call it any other thing, they exercise influence more than their country. One of such people was my late friend. He was murdered. Obasanjo. His country is a small country, but when he was alive, he differed. Most important attribute of leadership, you won't like it, I would say it. Fear of God.
What?
Fear of God.
Fear of God. Okay. Fear
Now,
of God.
when you're talking about leadership, many people, I don't know whether any of you, it has been considered as a factor. But you imagine any of the factors that they will say is important. Where fear of God does not have a role to play. That virtually don't. And if you have fear of God, the chances are that you will be a good leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now we face this side. Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Can we have two ladies and two gentlemen?
Okay, great. So specific. So, this gentleman. Yes, yes. Start and introduce yourself, please.
Good evening. So Akindemi Oyawale. I'm a final year PhD student from the University of East Anglia, and I research politics, especially security in Nigeria. I have a question, a contribution, and a request. I think I should start with the request because you mentioned when you asked the audience about who wanted to be a governor, nobody actually indicated interest. For me, I don't want to be a governor. I want to be president at some point. You mentioned mentorship has been kind of important, so I would appreciate some mentorship as well. So my question is this, and then my contribution will be linked to the question. My question is, how do we?
A lot of time.
Yeah, okay. How do we redefine African and Nigerian self-identity? Because we have been talking about leadership, but we've not paid attention to the construction of the African identity. Because most of the African or global kind of projects lean on liberalism. But if you go back to see how the African has been constructed, the African has been constructed as the other. Let's go back to the father of liberalism, John Locke. And I can cut it short. I can cut it short very quickly. So can I just? So he talks about life, liberty, and property, private property. But when you look at his North Carolina constitution, he constructed Africans as being subservient and within that property. So Africans did not have life, liberty, but they could be owned as property. So how do we then reconstruct that identity of ours that we can look inwards and not look outside for for direction. For example, looking at the Rudyard Kipling kind of the white man's burden, and think about an African as genuinely somebody that can think about how to progress his society.
Now, obviously, you are
Introduce yourself.
Okay, let me start by introducing myself. I'm really happy to be here today. My name is Ibrahim Larry, and I graduated from Imperial College London. And I'm so happy to be here tonight to be able to ask you these questions. The first question I would like to ask you is that as an aspiring political leader, we have the problem of godfatherism.
What?
Godfatherism in Nigeria. And sometimes it's very hard to penetrate the system. As young political leaders, how can we ensure that we penetrate the system to be able to also participate in leadership? I wouldn't say take over power, but most importantly, participate. I would also like to say that we know that you created a new crop of generational leaders in Africa, talking about like Okonjo, Iweala, and the rest of them. But currently, I do not see that happening with them. So they're not being able to actually do the same for the next generation. Why is that? And then lastly, political leaders, as political leaders, how can we ensure that we don't keep, bringing in the same people who are not performing? Not performing leaders, how do we ensure that we get past not performing leaders? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, I have to. I'll take only one of you. Decide amongst yourselves.
My name is Monica Aliabu. I just wanted to ask about how do you personally keep yourself motivated personally keep yourself motivated in this motivate yourself.
How do I keep myself motivated?
In this political climate where like everyone has already assumed that Africa is already a mess or it's going to continue to be a mess. Thank you.
Thank you. So mid-challenge, who's a non-Nigerian on this side of the table? Non-Nigerian.
No, I'm not Nigerian. Good evening, sir. My name is Olusegun. I'm from Botswana. I am staff at King's, and I'm also a PhD student. Mine is going to be really short. My question is, I want to know what you are doing now to motivate young people, to mentor them, and to ensure that they think about being part of leadership, or they consider leadership as something that they'd like to take out. Thank you.
Now,
so, will you respond to that set, sir?
You can take one more as it's writing.
Is she Nigerian?
Yes, I am.
Oh. Is there a non-Nigerian on this side of the room? Eh?
now what is what is your prejudice against Nigeria?
No, we don't want it to seem like Nigerians are monopolizing the.
Sorry, just a quick question. With regards.
Say who you are.
My name is Zoe. I'm an ALC student, masters. With regards to being a soldier and a military leader before you entered the sort of governmental zone, what qualities and characteristics did you learn as a soldier that you implemented as a politician?
Mr. President, she is. Are you already in the?
I'm a British Army officer. Will be an officer.
Very good.
Okay, let me deal with this. Identity. My belief is that all human beings have multi-identities. All human beings. For you, for instance, you have the same identity with her and with him because you are black. You are from Nigeria? You are from
Nigeria.
You are from
Nigeria.
Wow.
Huh?
Botswana.
Okay. You and her,
She's
you
from
have the
Kenya.
same identity, black. But when it comes to nationality, you have different nationalities. Now, but you are black. She's black. That's one common identity. Nationality, you are Nigerian, she's Cameroonian. Now, how do I define identity? Of course, for me, identity is that which you know me by and what I know myself by. Not just with what you know me by, but also what I know myself by. Wherever I go, I wear dress like this. In some places, it can be inconveniencing because they look at me, I'm going through the immigration or custom. They say, you stay here, you are wearing funny dress. I say, hey, don't call you my dress funny. It's you wearing funny dress because you tie rope around your neck. No, I don't say that. Okay, but that's part of my own identity. That's part of my own identity. Now, any Muslim here? Okay, he is a Muslim. Another Muslim. Okay. Now, that's their identity, a common identity. Now, I am not a Muslim. Even if we come, I had a sister who is dead now. She was a Muslim. So we have different identity. We were born by the same father, the same mother, but we have different identity when it comes to religion. So, what are you known by? And what do you know yourself by? I think that's what matters. I will not worry what people say about me. If you give me a wrong identity, I will throw it at you. But I know what I am. Number two, godfatherism and non-performing leaders. Now, I don't know, I've always heard about this godfatherism. There's nobody who gets into a particular position without having somebody helping him. Nobody who gets into a particular position without somebody in one form or the other helping him. So if that is what we call godfatherism, we all are products of godfatherism. Here is General. I appointed him Chief of Army Staff. I didn't know when he joined the army and all that. Then I appointed him Chief of Army Staff. My job is done. But then he performed as Chief of Army Staff. That is his own responsibility. And because he performed as Chief of Army Staff, I appointed him Chief of Defense Staff. Again, he performed. I chucked him out of the army. Because when I took over, all those who have benefited from coups, I don't want us to perpetuate coups. So I got 93 of them, I got them out of the army. Because he got out of the army that time, he became a governor. And I have hand in him becoming a governor. Godfatherism, if you like. Now, so this idea of godfatherism, where do you have anybody becoming something who is not recommended by somebody or appointed by somebody or seen by somebody? Now, don't let anybody fool you. There's godfatherism everywhere. Yeah. Now, what I will not accept, and you should not accept, is somebody saying, because I contributed to you becoming governor, then every month you should be giving me something. And I believe that there's something like that going on. That must not be allowed. Okay, non-performing leaders. You see, the beauty of democracy is also what is not so good about it. I keep saying, you see, democracy, it does not give job to the best man. It gives job to the chosen man. And it doesn't give job to the best man. Because if you are going to be a lecturer here, you will come for interview, you will apply, they will but who, before which panel does a governor go? You vote for him. Without meaning to embarrass Mrs. Fayemi, I believe that Governor Fayemi was kicked out of office the time he should not have been kicked out of office. Don't tell him that. But I told him what he also did wrong. That you can tell him, because I told him. He was much better than the man who came in and got him out of office. But what did he do wrong? He was running the affairs of the state. There are three major groups of people in that state: farmers, teachers, and civil servants. Any other group? No. Except women. Okay. Farmers, teachers, and civil servants. My brother, in his first term, decided teachers should take exam. Is it teachers?
Competency test.
Huh?
Yes.
Call it anything. He decided teachers will take exam. This man. I don't know what he did with civil servants, something. But so they waited for him. When it came to the time of voting, whatever else, and I told him, I said, look, my dear brother, that was a stupid thing to do. You should have waited until you have your second term. When you have had your second term, you deal with farmers, you deal with teachers, you deal with civil servants. Now, the thing is that power of removing non-performing, and it depends on how you define it, non-performing leader is in your hand, your vote. Your vote. We have done it in Nigeria with Jonathan. And inshallah, we will do it again. Self-motivation. I am always motivated. I'm an incurable optimist. About almost any situation, and particularly about Nigeria and Africa. We will get there. We will get there. I have seen it. Look at the president was reading a little bit about it. When I came in as elected president, some people said, I will be the last president of Nigeria because after me there will be no more Nigeria. And they have reason to feel that way. We were owing about 36 billion. What we had in the reserve was about 3 billion. The price of oil was about $89 per barrel. So everything was against. And then we have Maso, we have Egisu, we have what is the one in your own part of the world? Odua. We have them. We have all of them trying to break up the country. And some people came to me and said, you will be the last president.
How about Sharia?
Well, we had Sharia. We had Sharia. Okay, the point is that you have to motivate yourself. You see, you have to be optimistic. The glass is half full, not half empty. For me, and in every situation, I look for something that is positive. In every situation, something that is positive. So that's how I motivate myself. Wherever I go, when you see, if you go to a place, where you are in London, if all that you want to see is bad thing in London, just go on the street. You will see bad thing everywhere. If you go to my village and what you want to see is good thing, bad as my village is, small as it is, it doesn't matter how large you make the map of Nigeria, my village will never appear. It's so insignificant. But if you go there and you go with positive mind and what you see what is good. So motivation. What am I doing now in leadership? I said a bit of it. I've established a potential library, the first of its kind in Africa. We have a section of that potential library which is Youth Development Center. In addition, we have what you may call the brain box of that potential library, which we call Center for Human Development and Dialogue. All those are all about youth development. Then I have an organization, an NGO that I established since 1986. How long ago would that be?
Okay.
Huh? 40?
Yeah,
1986.
Yeah, about 32 years.
32 years.
Was that ALF?
Okay, we call ALF. We call it ALF. And it does nothing but look at youth development. And it's still there. One Dr. Ajayi is in charge. Do all these things, entrepreneurial training, and all that. Because there can be no end to that. There can be no end to that. And then, of course, I also established a university.
And the secondary school.
Wow. Primary school.
So some of you are counted. There's only one last question, Mr. President.
Oh, okay. The last question is what am I doing? Okay. Principles. Oh yes, so when people don't know, they say, oh yes, when your military training, it will make you not to be a good leader. In fact, if anything, it will make you to be a good leader. It is military training. First,
Yeah, but I know more
give you discipline. First. And if you are going to be a good leader, you must be a disciplined leader. Second, all the things that you think you hear and they try to use in leadership training, in management training, they all come from the military. Critical path, method, and all these, they are things that have been tried and tested and have worked. Look at the principles of war. And compare it with the principles of leadership. You will see so much similarity. And for me, I am only happy that I have been a soldier before I became a
president.
Democratic elected. It has been tremendously
Wonderful. You see that? I want to apologize because people have smiled at me, made eye contact, everything. You have more questions. That's why we have a reception to follow. But Mr. President, succession you talked about. And succession also happens at the African Leadership Center. I'm proud to let you know. The center we established in Nairobi, I think almost 10 years ago now, is now no longer being run by myself. One of the alumni of the African Leadership Center, who was at King's 2009, became its director. And she will give you a vote of thanks so that you actually see that there's succession and there's actually generational change that is possible. Shuvai Nyoni, Director, African Leadership Center.
I think you will all agree with me that this was a most fascinating and excellent start to the African Leaders Global Dialogue Series of the African Leadership Center. And Mr. President, on behalf of the ALC at King's College London, I would like to give you a very, very warm vote of thanks for honoring us today, honoring the invitation to be the inaugural speaker in this lecture series. Thank you for giving us our first, making it an active mentoring session, as you said. And I think one of the things I will certainly take away, as Prof has already spoken about, is succession planning. Prof always says your first day in any job is the first day you begin to plan for yours and hand over to the next person who will take on after you. So I think that is a message we have heard very loud and clear. So thank you so very much, and also for those lessons in leadership that I'm quite sure everyone will take away and will talk about at length in tomorrow's class and over the week as we have our leading practitioners of the African Leadership Center here with us. I'd also like to thank Professor, the President and Principal of King's College has already left, but to thank him and his office for collaborating in this intergenerational dialogue, and also the President, the Office of the Vice Principal and Vice President, and all those at the ALC for your organizing and making this happen. Thank you so very much. And finally, thank you to all of you for being here this evening. And we look forward to having you again in our next lecture in the series. Please join us on the 8th floor for a reception where we hopefully can continue the conversation and also interact with you, Mr. President. Thank you so very much, everyone, for being here.